Hi everybody, the peace fight. Chess can feel complicated at times, but understanding this concept, I promise you will play far better chess. That has been the experience of my own play and also my students' play. In this 5-step course, we will first go through the concept in this video, and in the next 4 we're gonna go through some different examples of the different battles we can experience to really make us understand the concept even better. Alright, first round. What is the peace fight? A peace fight occurs when usually minor pieces, such as bishops and knights, are battling each other for superiority. The chess player who are better at recognizing such an occurrence and acts upon it earlier than their opponent will succeed in the upcoming peace fight. Alright, let's take a look at this position then. White has 2 bishops, and black has a knight and a dark squared bishop. Then we see the pawn structure in the center. There's a lot of tension there, and this tension means so very much for the peace fight, as we will see in the examples here. With white to move, there are 3 different ways of treating the center: d5 or d takes e5, or a more reactionary move like rook c1. Let's examine d5 here. It takes some space, strengthens some light squares, but it does weaken some dark squares. And this is quite relevant here. Black can play bishop g5 here, which is a great move, because when these bishops are exchanged, black will have an easier access to the dark squares, and white will have an even more difficult time getting access to the dark squares. For example, here white would love to play b4, and that's why a5. If white tried even harder and make the mistake a3, then black would cement his control of the dark squares by playing a4. The knight already has a great outpost on c5, but why not go to d4 in the future? And this is what black really won here in the peace fight. Compare that to that bishop on f3, that question mark. Where would it find its purpose in this game? Okay, let's go back to the other option, where white had the option of playing rook c1. A sort of waiting move, but black, he won't wait. He sees there's a peace fight to be won by exchanging on d4, also with the bishop. And when the queen takes back, we can consider the peace fight here again, because we have this question mark here on f3 again. It might want to open up with e5 to have a diagonal here. And that's why black can play knight c6, win a tempo on the queen, but also closing down for the diagonal. And black wants to have a firm grip on the dark squares, so that's why queen g5 of course makes sense, because when we exchange, take back, all those dark squares are firmly in black's grasp. And black has really won the peace fight here, because knight d4 is a threat here, and following up with c5, that's an outpost for the knight, and the bishop still is a question mark. Coming back to the third option of d takes e5. It would be best for black to take back with the pawn, because if he takes back with the bishop, he loses a little bit of that grip in the center, because he has less pawns in the center, and queen d2 with the idea of eventually playing f4 seems good. So after d takes e5, white is a little ahead of development, so he will make use of that and play queen b3, targeting that pawn on b7. So if black plays b6, white can first put a rook in to d1, queen moves out of the way, and now we have to consider what to do about the peace fight, because we still have this question mark on f3. What can we do about it? Those are the kind of questions you need to ask yourself when you are considering the peace fight, because black will play bishop g5 and maybe win the peace fight. Okay, bishop d4, because now black cannot play knight c6 as he wanted to, because white will swoop in with rook d7, and that's chaos. Okay, coming back. Bishop g5, black will play instead. And then comes our first beauty move, c5, played like a brushstroke. And why does that make sense? Because white is in front of development and he needs to attack on the light squares, c5 opens up. And after the exchange on e3, white will take back with the pawn, because now the rooks and the queens and the bishop are all active. And if black was tempted by that c5 pawn, white can crash through with rook takes f7. Because when black takes back, then rook d8 check. And if black tries a desperate attempt of queen f8, we just take that queen and then play queen d5 with a double attack. Okay, so white was just winning the peace fight regardless? Not so fast, let's come back. Because if black saw what could have happened If he had lost the peace fight like in the previous example, then he could have fought back and activated his knight towards the center. The next beauty move, knight c6. And if white were to take that pawn, queen takes b7, then black will drop in on d4. White will have to take that immediately, and he has a little trick, but black has a trick back, because on e5, black can just put rook b8 first, and then take back. And though black is behind with a pawn, I really do think there's a lot of compensation. I'm very much fighting in the piece fight here. Lastly, I'll make a super short example of how to think the piece fight in the early part of the game. This is a c3 Sicilian, where this g6 is a little tricky move that I play myself with the black pieces. The reason I play it is because white players are not that familiar with it, and if white gets a little careless, black will really pounce on it. For example here, if white plays knight f3, black will gladly play a bishop g4. Get the bishop out the pawn chain, play e6, cover the d5 pawn, and potentially threat d4, a pawn that can become very weak very fast. So therefore, because of this piece fight that we talked about today, h3 can make the bishop become a little bit of a question mark here. Perhaps black is forced to play e6 with the bishop still back on c8, and that's not ideal at all. So that's it from the first step in the 5-step course on the piece fight. If you have any questions, I will gladly answer them. Just please let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next one.